Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by the Time We Discuss studio. Today I have Pam here, and it's time we discuss voiceover artists. Pam, thank you so much for being here today.
You are quite welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, Pam, when I think of a voiceover artist, I think of someone doing the voices for maybe animation or someone reading audiobooks, or maybe someone that's overdubbing for film. I honestly don't know how close I am to the mark on this one, or if I'm just missing it completely. So I really want to ask you, what exactly does a voice artist do, and what types of projects do you have an opportunity to tackle?
Well, great question, because I think everything you listed are all genres for voice artists. So there's many, many, many. Some people love animation and character voices. You just kind of find your niche that you really enjoy. So it could pertain to all of that. For me, I'm going down the commercial path where I will actually record commercials for businesses and be their voice, whether it's broadcast for TV and radio, or perhaps on their website. So that would be like, offline, or actually online, I guess you would say, for their promotions. So that's kind of the path that I'm taking. And I also do the audiobooks. So I have about 30 under my belt now, and I narrate under PJ Wood. So people can find that on Audible if they're audiobook listeners. I typically have done romance, sweet romance. I've done about a half a dozen or so Amish romance dramas, which I love, and the little historical westerns. Something that has preferably a happily ever after ending. So, but I have done a couple of mysteries, and I do love a good suspense mystery as well. So, but that's kind of my path now. I'm kind of delving more into the commercial work. This year is my goal.
So now, when you first started doing this, did you start with the audiobooks, or did you start with commercials, or is it kind of all at the same time? How did that work?
Well, that's a really good question. Um, when I went to college for communications, and I knew in my heart that I wanted to do, at that time, radio. Which I did. I got out of college and I worked in radio for quite a long time, which now in the industry, a lot of people say, don't tell them you worked in radio, because oftentimes that radio message says to people, at least I've often heard, that, it might be too harsh of a sound, like the really die-hard broadcast sound, when now everything is kind of softer and more conversational. But as I've told people, radio has given me the poise and presentation, that I've earned and developed over the years. So I'm very proud of my radio history. Um, but that was my goal, to get into radio, and I did that. And I always wanted to do commercials, more of a national level. But life took me, like many, in different directions for many, many years. I got out of it completely. And I started to sneak in, trying to get in and again with some close friends, getting some guidance from them who were still in the industry. And again, this is many years later. And they were like, well, do you have a home studio? And I'm like, no, I don't. So I dropped it again and went on to other things in corporate communications, with nonprofits, with businesses, and, spanned a career doing those types of communications. And then COVID hit. And I was actually, and this may be another segment for you, I was a ballroom dance instructor for 14 years. So that might be another episode, Dan. So, so I had to close that down, or felt I needed to, when the big hit came in March of 2020. Now, I don't know what it was that crossed my path. I to this day, I can't tell you, but something hit me with voiceover, on social media. I can't, I wish I could remember, but I don't. But I started looking up groups on Facebook and voiceover groups, and started kind of inching into these interest groups. And just from there, it just snowballed. So from March 2020, um, by the summer, I was getting some coaching from two very reputable voice coaches, one in Los Angeles and one in Australia. And then the booth appeared. It's like out of nowhere. Some dear friends put it together for me. And I get a lot of compliments on the sound. So I feel, it's a home professional studio that I can record from. Um, and then just lots of coaching, lots of coaching, lots of auditioning. And it didn't go as fast as I thought. I worked hard on it, but I was now pretty green in the eyes of the new voiceover world. So then I started the audiobooks, started auditioning for audiobooks on a platform where many of us start, um, and had some success with that. So I have now done 30 plus 32 books total. So now I'm ready to revisit the commercial aspect after coaching, and coaches say, "You're ready, Pam. You sound just as good as anybody else out there. You're ready to do your demo." So this past fall, the demo was created and launched at the end of, no, about the second week of January, commercial demo, which I'm very proud of. And that's how we connected. So a friend of mine on LinkedIn shared my demo. You saw it, and voila, here we are.
Bam, that's how it all
That was a really
unfolds.
long answer.
No, that's great. That is so much great information. So going back to your work in radio, how how much did that prepare you for what you do now?
I was telling my mom a story the other day, and I was 19, 20. I was still in college working at the local station. But again, I think it prepared me for the poise and the professionalism that I have. And one scenario sticks out in my mind. It was a little AM station, and we were carrying the local, I think it was the Christmas parade in town. So I happened to be the one in the studio, and a colleague was outside at the parade doing the play by play, or maybe we were listening to the official, parade play by play. But I had the responsibility of fading out the parade, coming back to the studio to play the spots, the commercials, and go back in again. And I remember doing that. I don't remember the details, but I remember doing that. And that next week, the general manager, who really supported me, somehow I came to find out that he wanted to know who was on the air, who of the staff was on the air doing these transitions, because they were so good and so smooth and nothing, went wrong. And so that sticks in my mind, as being able to be prepared to, do some things on air that, are spontaneous, I guess. So,
That must have been really cool, being so new to the industry and having the general manager seek you out and give you that
yeah,
feedback.
it was, again, I was in college, and he was, well, I won't even venture a guess on his age at that time, but, that really made me feel, very good. And I had a couple of instances. I think the sound that I had then is similar to now. I was just very, I wasn't overboard. I wasn't like the, hey, kind of DJs that a lot of times stations are known for. And so I've just carried that through with me.
That's awesome. Talking about the audiobooks,
Hmm.
now, do you have to do any of the audio editing yourself? So if you're speaking, you're reading, and you make a mistake, you have to go back, redo it. How much of that do you have to do on your own?
Well, when I got into this altogether, I soon realized that I was going to have to edit. And when I worked in radio way back when, we, I'm embarrassed to say, we'd go in the studio and record a commercial. We had those old, they look like 8 tracks almost, and we would erase them. We would erase them on that machine and then do it again, and erase it and do it again. So I had no editing experience, and it scared the bejesus out of me that I was going to have to learn how to edit my work. So the first step I did was to take an editing class with the program I use, which is Audacity, which helped a lot. Now that's been 4 years ago. It was in January. And so now I feel like I'm like the ninja editor. I can move pretty quickly. So yes, to answer your question, we as voice artists, we need to learn how to edit our work. Even if you're working with, a production studio who's going to do all of that for you. You got to learn the ropes. You got to learn how to do that. Get your sound and, um, learn how to, I'm not an expert at it, but I'm pretty good now. I can match my sound from a different day, those kinds of things. So, yeah, it's very important to learn how to edit your work.
Okay. Okay. Changing directions completely. Um, I can't. This thought just kind of popped in my head. In your line of work, is it important to have an agent, or is that unnecessary? Is that helpful? How does that work?
In my knowledge base, audiobooks, I think, typically don't have agents. I think that's more maybe in the commercial field. I asked that one time of my coach, and it was like, no, it's not something that we do. So, I would say if you're a top tier talent and you've now have an agent and have been accepted on an agent roster, then perhaps they may send you an audiobook. But I would venture a guess that most of my contemporaries, if not all, in audiobooks do not have agents. That would be it's a broad statement, but I think that's more of a commercial um, representation, probably.
That's good to know because I'm trying to think about what could be possible barriers to entry with different people, and if that isn't necessary, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think, uh, well, I don't want to jump ahead, if we're going to talk about how we got into it, but I would say, matter of fact, when I sent my commercial demo out and my coach, he was like, don't send it here. It was a specific place, because they are managers. They are talent managers. And unless you're making, you know, gobs of money for them to get their take or their percentage, it's probably not going to be very viable for you to start there. Here's where I think you should start sending out your demos, and gave me some recommendations. So yeah, I think you have to be a pretty high tier talent to have that. So.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Mhm.
How important, and based on the example you just gave me, how important is it for someone to get like a voice coach that can not only guide them with the use of their voice, but also from a business perspective on what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing? How important is that?
I would say coaching is really important if you're just starting out. So many people, and I'm in different groups on Facebook for this type of thing, and you know, probably 6 a week people come on. I'm new to this. I'm told I have a good voice for this. I love to read, but there's really so much more. So if you're brand new to it, you're just starting out and somebody has told you you have a good voice for it, can you tell a story? Can you, do you consider yourself an actor? Which I was not. I have to be honest, I was not an actor, but I have since grown my skills through a lot of coaching. And I would say coaching specific to audiobooks, if that's your, find the coach where it's going to benefit you on the path that you want to take. So if you want to go commercial, make sure you look up a reputable commercial voice coach. If you're going to take the path of audiobooks, make sure you investigate and research who the bests are in audiobooks. And then I think great that you brought up, because there are a few out there who are voice artists, voice actors who do audiobooks, who do commercials, but they also coach the business side of things, which I think is a really neat skill set for people specific to voiceover. Um, so yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Now, I assume you're probably self-employed. Um,
Yeah. Mhm.
how difficult is it for you to find work? Are there forums out there? Is a lot of word of mouth? What's that process like for someone that might not have the confidence to be an entrepreneur? What does that look like?
Yeah. So how to find the work. A lot of us start out auditioning books on ACX, which is owned by Amazon and Audibles all together. And that's sort of the dating site between authors and narrators. So the authors upload their book to be recorded, the narrators submit their auditions, and then the author chooses. And Sometimes we get it, and sometimes we get that note saying, "Oh, sorry, you didn't get it. There's many more to choose from." But ever since COVID, which is just about the time I got into it a year later, thousands of people have flooded the industry to because they had to work from home and they were trying to figure out what they could do and how they can make a little money. And it's really made it difficult, for a lot of us to, you know, work with the competition. The other rather negative issue right now is AI, where authors now are choosing, not all, but many are now choosing to have the artificial voices voice their books. So they prefer or choosing the artificial side versus the human side. And, we're all, of course, for the human side where we can, exude the emotions and, the tears if necessary and, the laughs and the humor and where an AI voice can't do that. So that's been a real challenge for those of us in the industry trying to work. So trying to find work is a little harder than it was even 4 years ago. So you just have to keep at it. Some people put in, I don't put in as many auditions as I used to. Just time doesn't allow us, as I mentioned to you, I'm a caregiver and, my time in the booth, is a little limited, a little more limited than it was even 3 years ago. So, but I audition for the ones that speak to me or that will require my signature sound. Um, and, now I'm trying to reach out to publishers a little more and working with them and trying to get established with them, even after, 3 years. I keep in touch with them, and so it's a slow, methodical process.
So when you were speaking about AI, it made me think of what recently happened with the writer's strike
Mhm.
for sitcoms and whatnot. And I remember that was one of the big things they wanted as part of their
Yes.
contract, I guess, was that they wanted protections against AI.
Yeah.
So that leads me to this question for you: as a voiceover artist, um, is it do they have unions or guilds or anything like that that you can be a part of that look out for your best interests, or not so much?
There are, and I don't know enough really to tap into that subject. I guess the two big ones are the SAG-AFTRA, which is what the strike was about, and people can choose to join that or not. I don't know all the ins and outs, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to defer that to another person, maybe who can answer that better for you.
Okay, so Pam, let me ask you this. When it comes to doing what you do currently,
Mhm.
how important is it from an educational perspective to go to college for, say, a communications degree or even as like an acting degree? How much does that make sense in doing what you do?
I think that's a really good question because my degree is in communication arts. And for a while after I graduated, I started to think, man, I wish I had really gone into something more specific. I wish I had gone into m- or dived a little deeper into maybe radio and television broadcasting or something a little more specific. But looking back in hindsight, the communications curriculum held me well over a long career. So when I wasn't in broadcasting, I was working in administration offices and nonprofits, and I was presenting in front of groups and, you know, speaking and writing and newsletters and, any of the forms of communication. So in that respect, the broader scope of a communications degree actually served me quite well. So I'm don't know if I would change it going back or not. That's a good question, but it did serve me very well to
Okay.
get to this point.
Okay. And that kind of thinking about this a little more thoroughly too, I'm thinking when you're doing your voice coaching, because I have zero experience in that, I don't even know what that's like. But do you incorporate any acting components to that so you can capture the right sound when you're reading the books, or is there anything like that?
Well, I've had voice coaching, voiceover coaching, and I've had audiobook acting coaching. So it is kind of two different things, but when you ball them all together, they all help you out. So I wasn't really an actor per se, whereas a lot of the audiobook narrators have a heavy acting background. So now I do consider myself a voice actor because I've done quite a bit of training in the last couple years. But yes, it does help. It helps us with, um, when it comes to audiobooks, um, learning how not to just read the text as if it's a scene playing in front of us, but actually being that person, being in the body of that person in that scene. And that's a little tough. You think you're just kind of recording and what you're seeing in this little imaginary scene in my head. Historical romance. The sheriff comes to town on his horse and he, saves a damsel in distress off of the boardwalk. But you have to be them. And so those are skills that we learn and constantly working on, always working on. So.
That makes sense. Now, for a professional that's changing careers, and they may have been working professionally for, 10, 15, 20 years or something like
Mhm.
that, and they might not have a communications background. At that point in time, do you think it makes more sense for them to just pursue the voice acting coach direction as opposed to doing anything with communications or acting? What's your take on that from your experience?
Um, I think it would be beneficial if they could perhaps zero in on really what their heart is wanting to do. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, I was in this like mastermind group type thing with marketing and business. And I was actually in two groups. And at just about at the same time, both coaches in each group more or less said, you know, choose the path you want to take. Choose the path. Does it mean you can't work on other things? But choose the path that really speaks to you. And at that time, I was kind of doing both things. I was doing auditioning for voiceovers. I was just starting out in audiobooks. So I had an epiphany. And I thought, okay, this next year, I'm going to devote my time and energy and coaching to audiobooks. And that kind of helped me make a decision as to where to start. So if they don't have any acting, if they don't have any or they feel they don't have any big communication skills, I would say try to zero in on what you want to do. If you want to do voiceover work, character work, commercial work, or are you more in line with, do audiobooks really uh, get to you? I mean, is that really what you think you'd want to do? Then choose the coaching that will help you leap into that. So there are voiceover coaches, there are audiobook coaches. Then find the one that speaks to you. Oftentimes they will give you a free, 15-minute chat to see if you're a good fit for their program or for them as a coach. Take advantage of that if they offer it. And if you get a good vibe, good. If you don't get a good vibe, try someone else. But I would say try to pick the path and lock, I don't say lock that in, but I think that would help rather than ping-ponging back and forth from I want to do this and I want to do this. So, and get coaching. Coaching, I think, is really, especially if you don't have that background, because I think it's going to open a whole new world from your perspective about, wow, I never thought about that. When audiobooks, I never thought about it that way. There's just a lot to learn and a lot to absorb. So,
That's really, really great information. Thanks so much for that, Pam.
oh,
Now,
absolutely.
at this part during the conversation, I'd really like to break out a surprise question. Usually has
Okay.
absolutely nothing to do with what the person does for a living.
Okay.
So your surprise question today. I want you to think about something which you recently discovered. It could be something like food or travel, travel spot, something like that that you recently discovered. And upon discovery, you thought to yourself, ah, geez, I really wish I found this like 5 years ago.
Well, that does take some thought and pondering. And I know this might come across as a little superficial, but I have recently rediscovered actually crocheting. And for me now, I have a purpose in it. I did it many, many, many years ago. And then all of a sudden, those algorithms, they talk, the algorithms on Instagram and different places, I started seeing some crochet things. And of course, once you click once, that's it. That's all you see, right? So I started seeing more and more. And this was about maybe Christmas time of 2022, something like that. So it's about a little more than a year ago. And so I thought, oh, I might pick this up again. Oh my gosh, Dan, it's led me to becoming a crochet addict. I'm just totally, there's yarn in every room in this house. And so, however, I started out not really having a purpose, but I lost two friends to breast cancer about a year and a half ago. And so now I make things to give back to the unit where they were, inpatient and outpatient. And so I just happen to have something here. These are just small little things I can do for people who might get chilled, during their treatment or in their rooms. And I make little lap gans or lap blankets. I make beanie hats. I make fingerless gloves. I do sell a few things here and there at craft shows. I just started doing that. But really, my purpose is to give back. And I've made a great connection with the local hospital, the unit, the supervising nurse. And I reach out to her every couple months. Hey, what do you need? And I took a bunch over at Christmas time for both sides, inpatient and outpatient. And she said the lap blankets have really been popular. So now I kind of have a purpose. I have a reason why I sit and crochet every night. So it calms me, it soothes me, it gives me purpose. And so I kind of wish I had rediscovered this a little earlier, but I'm all in it now.
And that is awesome. For the benefit of the people that are watching this afterwards, I mean, you can see me now, but usually when I make the video, it's just whoever's talking is showing. And for the people that are watching this, while Pam's speaking, I have this huge grin on my face. That's just a very, very honorable thing that you're doing. It's such a good cause, and I'm sure so many people would just really appreciate that little bit of work that you put into that. I say a little bit of work, the work you put into it.
Right. It
From
is little in the scheme of things, but, in the big picture, but, it does. It's like I told somebody I can't crochet fast enough. It's like I crochet and I put it aside, I crochet and I put aside, and I start building a little stack. And when I have enough to take over, then I call her and I say, okay, let's do a drop off. So
Oh, that's such a great thing. I'm happy that you're doing that, because I like
thank
that. So
you.
many people are going
I
to
love it.
take so much
I
from
love
that.
it.
So Pam, one thing I like to do when I'm speaking with someone is to give them maybe about a minute or two to talk about something that they're involved in, either a cause they believe in, a personal project, their business, the company they work for, something like that.
Mhm.
So I want to give that to you. So if you want to take a minute or two and talk about something like that, your business or something, the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you. Well, of course, your listeners and viewers can find me at voiceoverpam.com. On the website, I've actually got some samples. So if any casting directors happen to be listening, you'll hear several audiobook samples, and you'll hear my new commercial demo. So I just finished that, and it was launched in early January. And that was a long time coming. That took a while in several instances for that to come to fruition. Confidence level, skill level, all of that, finally made its way together, and I'm very proud of that. So right now, really, I'm just, using my contacts and my samples to reach out to casting directors and production companies that have rosters for female voiceovers. And just fingers crossed for the rest of this year that things will start to move in the commercial direction for me. I'm still working on audiobooks. I'm actually just started recording one this week. Can't say what it is because I haven't been given permission to release that information, but it is a nonfiction, and I am kind of leaning, as far as audiobook work, into bios and memoirs. Again, casting directors. I just have a desire now to tell somebody else's story, that, perhaps, true stories or true crime, as long as they're not gory. But I have some of that on my website to let them know what I'm interested in. And that's really what kind of keeps me busy now, is just reaching out to new folks and hoping that they'll take a chance on me.
That sounds fantastic. And you can be reached at it's voiceoverpam.com, right?
Yes, voiceoverpam.com. It's funny. They want you to have the professional one, and I do, but it's longer and they're connected. So if they reach out to the other one, I still get it. But voiceoverpam.com is the website, and email is voiceoverpam@gmail.com. So, yeah, I would, if anybody wants to work together, wants another sample, wants to reach out to me, if you're an author, or a production house, that's the best way to reach me. Or you can message me on social media. I'm pretty active on both Instagram and Facebook. So
Fantastic. And Pam, I'll go ahead. I'll put all those links in the description of the show so people can easily access those too.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, me too. Thanks, Pam, for joining us today, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for stopping by the studio. My name is Dan, and this is Time We Discuss. I really enjoyed speaking with Pam, and I hope you enjoyed the time too. If there's a profession you'd like me to cover, make sure you put a comment, and I'll get that person for you. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe. That'll do it. See you next time on Time We Discuss.